Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from GreenSpark Solar, serving the greater Rochester and Finger Lakes regions for over 20 years. GreenSpark Solar is dedicated to helping people power their homes and businesses with local solar power and battery storage backup. More at greensparksolar.com.
From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm your guest host, Scott Pukos. Our connection this hour took place July 30th, 1999, when a super low-budget horror movie by the name of The Blair Witch Project was released to the world. No big stars, no recognizable director, no fancy special effects, a minuscule $60,000 budget. The Blair Witch Project was a horror film that tapped into a different type of fear. Before it was released, a mysterious website dropped, and there was persistent chatter that this was not a fictional story, but instead actual footage found from camcorders left behind by 3 young filmmakers who disappeared in the Maryland woods in the mid-90s. Blair Witch's debut at the 1999 Sundance Film Festival listed the cast, who used their real names in the movie, as either missing or deceased. It was a viral marketing campaign that studios dream of constantly. Against all odds, a sequel to Orson Welles' famous 1938 radio broadcast of War of the Worlds, where listeners were convinced that an alien invasion was happening. We'll see if the Connections team lets me try anything like that in the future. Blair Witch's word of mouth was so powerful that this tiny film became an instant hit. In the 26 years since its release, the film has reached legendary status in the pantheon of scary movies. This strategy surely wouldn't work today, where Reddit detectives would instantly spot the marketing hoax, but horror movies have continued to be creative in their approach to selling their films to audiences. 2018's Hereditary hooked advanced screening crowd members up to heart rate monitor devices and used that data and those heart rate spikes during, let's say, certain scenes to make their movie a horror hit. And something must be working. Horror is a genre that is, by some measures, the hottest in movies and streaming. Why do scary movies make such great summer flicks? And in a world full of real-life stress, why do we still choose to be scared for fun? We'll talk about all this hour. I'd like to welcome my guest, Antonia Bias, digital creator, horror artist, and film enthusiast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We have Lee Rodriguez, artist, horror movie fan, and my coworker at the Little Theater. Welcome, Lee.
Hello, hello.
And finally, we have Danielle Del Plato, Greater Western New York Film Critics Association, GWNYFCA member, and a VHS collector at Donnie's Video. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Danielle, I'm starting with you because last time you were on, people emailed me asking about Donnie's Video. Can you just explain a little bit about this?
Yes. So Donnie's Video is a room in my home that is filled with VHS tapes.
So not a real store.
Not a real store. I would love to make it a real store at some point, but it's currently a room in my apartment.
And a bit of a coincidence this hour, all 3 of our guests collect VHS tapes. This is correct, right?
Yes.
Yes.
We're going to have to do a show on VHS collecting. If anyone else collects tapes, give us a call. 844-295-TALK is the number. We could talk VHS and horror movies. We're very flexible this hour. Okay, so I'm going to start with you here, Antonia. What makes horror a popular genre? What draws you to this type of movie?
I think like the big thing is just, as humans, we live very normal lives, 9 to 5, and horror gives you that like dopamine. It gives you that adrenaline rush that we like crave. So that's why I like it.
Great reason. Lee, how about you for this one?
Oh, geez. I'm going to try not to get too philosophical.
I mean, you can if you want.
That's where my brain always goes. I think, I mean, like you, it's very similar to like, I think what we crave is something that gives us a form of catharsis where people kind of look at it as a open diary that somebody else has written for them, where they can look at it and relate to it. And when life gets really tough, instead of shoving it down, we kind of release it and sit with it and feel with it. So I think people look towards it, even if it's a rom-com or horror. There's something that we innately look for emotionally, I guess.
It's like you work at a movie theater.
Oh, I don't know.
Danielle, what draws you to this genre?
I think for me, horror movies, it's like experiencing this really terrible emotion, but in a really safe capacity. And I think that sort of contradiction is always what drew me to the genre, because like I could be scared and like someone could be breaking into a home, but I'm cuddled up and cozy and safe, so it's fine.
You have your cats with you. You're
Exactly.
all good to go. And so, another thing I'm curious about. So far, our summer horror movie slate has included Bring Her Back, 28 Years Later. Later on, we'll have Together, Weapons. What makes summer a good time for scary movies? We usually think of October, spooky season, like that's when I'm watching the horror movies. But more films are released during the summer. So, Danielle, is there a certain reason why summer is a good season for this?
I mean, I think that kind of draws onto franchises a bit, right? So we're seeing like things like The Conjuring, they're doing their latest installment. We're seeing reboots. And I think summer is just such a good time for movies in general because people want to do things. They want to go out, they want to watch something, they want to be in air conditioning. So like you're going to see the bigger horror franchises out in the summer, which I think is great. But I also think it's just fun to be spooked all year round.
Right, it's true. Lee, you're nodding. Do you want to add on to this?
I think it's the unexpected, where you, in spooky season, you expect to be scared and dark and mysterious. All the Halloween decorations are up. So it's something that you walk into knowing what you're getting into. But in summertime, everything's bright and colorful and we're having a good time. We're outside. And then all of a sudden there's this looming essence behind you of like horror movie. It's the unexpected, how do I put it? Expecting the unexpected, but not, I guess.
I like the idea of a looming essence.
Yeah, just
always,
goes in the walls.
Always hovering about you. You never know. So one of the biggest horror movies, or one of the biggest movies, period, of the year is a horror movie, and that is Ryan Coogler's Sinners. So we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Sinner Summer.
Oh, wait, is that what we're calling it?
Yeah, we had Nosferatu Winter, now we're in Sinner Summer.
I need that on a t-shirt.
Yes, we gotta make shirts. Antonia, do you want to? So I take it you're a very big fan of Sinners.
Oh, I thought it was phenomenal. I went to the theater and saw it twice
Oh, okay.
because I thought it was that good.
Do you want to tell us a little bit? So we're going to try to avoid mostly spoilers, but we can talk a little bit about the plots. But can you explain a little bit why this film resonated with you?
Well, I've always just been like a vampire film fan. I love like the metaphor of the vampire and like what they can mean and bring to a story, because there's so many different variations that, you know, they can mean. So I thought that was like initially really cool. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to like avoid spoilers.
It's difficult,
hard.
right? Well, was there? So we talked a little bit before the show started about a certain scene that I think is, which isn't really a scary scene or anything. It showcases the talents of Miles Catton,
Yes.
who is a first-time person who hadn't been in any movies, and it just blew me away in this film. So in the scene, it's going to be difficult to explain, but it's the one where he first starts playing music, and if anyone saw it in IMAX, the aspect ratio starts changing during this scene, and there's a voiceover talking about how music can affect us and where it can bring you to different places, and it's really visually just a treat, which is why it's hard to explain when we're on radio.
Yeah.
But that specific scene, what did that mean when you were watching that for the first time or the second time? Like, what was going through your head?
I just thought it was so magical because it was just this true metaphor for like the doorway between, you know, past, present, future, life and death, and you know, oh my gosh, I don't want to spoil anything. You know, just like this doorway of like people always trying to find a way out, and then people always try to find a way in. And it was just everything going through time, and it was crazy.
So Lee and Danielle, you both have seen Sinners.
Mm-hmm.
Are we in agreement that it's Sinners Summer? Oh, Danielle's thinking maybe no.
I feel like I am the black sheep when it comes to Sinners.
Do you
Like,
have a hot take for us right now?
I didn't really like Sinners.
Okay.
I think they tried to say too much, and they kind of like, I love the first act. Don't get me wrong. Love the first act. Things change a lot. And then they start to say a lot. And I'm like, Okay, guys, there's a lot going on here.
You did a good
That's
job
what
of
I liked
avoiding
it.
It's
this
really hard to talk about this movie without spoiling it.
Well,
It
I
is.
think what we can say is the first act that you mentioned is really all about the characters,
Yes.
and it's a slow build. And then the second act goes more into the horror, the thriller genre, the action genre even. One of my favorite things is Michael B. Jordan, of course, playing twins. I am a twin, so I'm very excited about that. The jokes about Michael A. Jordan, a little obvious, but great. I'm on board with it. Lee, what were and again, I know it's so hard to talk about this
Yeah.
without spoiling anything, but your overall thoughts, were you a fan of this film?
I was, yeah. I love it. I do want to see it again. I think that there's so much in it that it does deserve a second, third, maybe even fourth watch. I think it does tackle a lot of social commentary. So it's very much the nuances that matter in this. And I think that's what's really interesting about horror now and new horror is that they're really looking at the artistic side of horror and looking at the humanity within horror. So, I mean, I loved it. I loved it for that. I loved the little, as like a musician's daughter, I loved the music part of it because there's little tiny things that maybe you didn't notice the first time that the second watch, you're like, oh, the striking of, a match or something like that. But yeah, it's really hard not to spoil it, but I think it does deserve its spotlight and to give it some grace because it is something that, maybe is trying to do a lot. So
I
don't know.
think it's so good because it just has something for everyone. Like
Yeah.
it's this big melting pot of like all these different like tropes and genres, and you have culture, you have music, and you have all these like different things. And specifically for like Coogler, like this was such a heart film for him. I saw a couple interviews of him, and he like lost his uncle who was big from like the Delta blues. Like he would listen to that, and his uncle passed away, and he just started like researching it, and they're from Mississippi. The movie's set in 1930s Mississippi, so I just thought that was just so cool that he poured his heart into this film, and I feel like anybody that likes any kind of genre can really take something from it.
For sure.
I like when there's a personal touch to a movie. I think you can tell, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially Ryan Coogler's other films, which I'm a fan of, but he did like Black Panther. He did the Creed movie, some more franchise stuff. So this is more of a
that's what he was
personal-
saying in some interviews too. Is he was like, I've been stuck doing these franchise films. I want to do something that's like from me. I want people to see me.
And I think that resonates because it's
Oh, yeah.
Sinner Summer, as we are aware. So we have a comment from Heather on YouTube. She says, it's an escape, talking about horror movies, from reality, and we all face death, and horror is an easy way to face fears from the safety of a theater or your own couch. People are out of school, families are together, and the companies make more money in the summer. We all know that. Actually, something about her comments made me think of Final Destination as well.
gosh, yeah.
So this is, okay, we're getting some reactions here. Different reactions.
Oh no! Oh my god! Do I just hate movies?
So Final Destination is a film that I've always liked. I think the first one came out in 2000, maybe.
Think so.
And for those who don't know, it's about someone who has a premonition of death. And so they avoid this big incident. And then death is out to get them. And death has a little bit of a bit that it's doing, which is these Rube Goldberg type really gruesome kills that are in these movies. So it had been probably close to a decade since we had a Final Destination movie, and a new one released this summer, Final Destination, Bloodlines. So I think, do we have two people that like it and one that's...
What can I say?
I'm gonna start with you, with Danielle. What were your gripes with this film?
I love Final Destination. I love it. I eat it up. But this one just felt very different from the others in a way that just didn't sit right with me. It felt like they were trying to go deeper, and they were trying to like tie in like family ideas, and like family's important. And it's like, that's not what I'm here for. I want to see people die in these really gruesome ways.
But they still do.
They do. There are some really good kills in the new one. Don't get me wrong. I just wanted more. Like, I wanted to see more people die.
We'll use that quote as the guideline for this hour. Antonia, so you were a fan of this one?
Yeah, I really liked it. I liked how they kind of kept it feeling like a early 2000s film almost. Like you didn't see a lot, like too much like cell phone usage, and like everybody was dressed like it was the 2000s.
It's coming back, baby.
I loved that. And I just loved like all the tie-ins like from the beginning and the end without like spoiling anything. Things tie in together and like they bring you back to some of the older movies too, certain parts of it. And the marketing for it is cool too. If you've ever seen the marketing for Final Destination movies.
Wait, what was the marketing for this one?
I don't know if it was for this one specifically, but for like the franchise in general. They had like the the semi trucks with the logs. They would have the Final Destination posters on the back of those.
Really?
Or they'd have billboards with like a person up there, like looking not great.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah. So what, I'm gonna add a little context. So in Final Destination 2, it has it opens with an infamous scene where there's a logging truck and the logs fall off, and it causes all this chaos and death, and it has caused an entire generation, myself included, to always change lanes. I will never drive behind a logging truck.
Never.
So them to do that in the marketing is sinister
Yes.
and diabolical.
That's what I mean.
And I love that so much.
I do too. I think it's so fun.
Lee, you're a fan of Final Destination and the new one?
Yes, absolutely. I love all of the first three are really like super deep in my heart. I loved them. They did like change my whole brain chemistry. But I feel like this one, as you said, did a really good job of bringing back like that early 2000s vibe where they have like these typical tropes of each character where it's like, oh, of course, like you kind of hate this person. You're like, oh, I can't wait for them to die. And they do it, which is great.
In very gruesome ways.
Oh, terrible ways. But then I think there's a quote, and I won't quote it because I don't want to ruin it, but from a very specific person in the movie who was battling a disease. And I think there was a very heartfelt moment where they pull you out of the fun, gruesome, let's just watch people die and kind of shocks you a little bit and like makes you a little heavier in your seat about life and death and what it means to kind of exist. And like, as I've said, I love the philosophical, emotional, human part of it. And I think that was a really cool dichotomy.
Okay. And that has me thinking. So I mentioned a little in the intro that there is a lot of heavy stuff happening in the world. There is a lot of stuff that can cause anxiety or cause us to be a little scared. So what about these movies makes us want to turn to this and be scared in the cinema? Is it what you were saying of that human element, or is it more? Yeah,
I think so. I think kind of going back to what I was just saying about Final Destination in that quote, I like a little bit of a reveal. Death scares the boogies out of me. It really does. And I think there's a lot of us that feel the exact same way. So when you're sitting in a room full of people who may feel the same way and get a little scared, you can kind of hold each other's hands and be like, it's okay. Like, we all know what's going to happen one day. But when I see a character in the movie who feels so firm in solace in it, it helps me a little bit feel like, okay, that person who's battling this feels okay and is ready. Maybe one day I'll feel like that too.
And Final Destination is very literal with that. Like they are battling against death as a character, a very diabolical character. But yeah, it really brings all that to the forefront. Danielle, what is it about like when there's a lot of stuff to be anxious with, unfortunately. So why do these work as comfort movies?
I mean, I think I agree with what Lee said. It's kind of like, I'm terrified of death. Like, I'm thinking about that all the time. But,
it scares the boogies out of you.
But on top of that, I also think, like, if they're, like, Final Destination, they're dying in gruesome ways. And I'm like...
That's a tough time.
That's a tough time, but that will probably never happen to me, right? So that kind of... I find comfort in knowing, like, I will probably never die like that, right?
As long as you're not driving behind
right.
Fingers crossed.
Exactly. But I don't know. There's just something comforting when, like, you're in a time that's so, uncertain, to watch people that are in worse scenarios makes you feel kind of a little better, you know?
At least I'm not haunted by this ghost or
Yeah.
chased by death.
This
or
is why I don't have a Ouija board in my house, you know?
you don't watch mysterious VHS tapes.
Yes, do not watch the unlabeled VHS tape. Don't do it.
Could be the Ring situation, which of course is, as I think some viewers might know, is a haunted tape that just bad things happen when you watch it. Antonia, why are these comfort movies for you?
I'm gonna have a different take. I don't think I'm that scared of death. I feel like a lot can come from, like, you know, media that portrays death, because there's movies like Talk to Me and Bring Her Back, where it's a little more about like the veil between life and death, and you know, the grief that comes with it and how to cope with things. I just feel like you can take a lot of comfort in like knowing that, you know, sometimes death isn't the end.
So we have another comment on YouTube from Heather, who says, loving this podcast. So kudos to our guest here. And that says, and Final Destination movies are awesome. Tony Todd, enough said.
Oh my god.
So Tony Todd did have a mic drop moment in Final Destination Bloodlines, which I believe was his final role.
Yes,
before
that's
he
why
died.
it was
Yeah.
so eerie. It was insane that was his last role he ever played, and what he said specifically.
And I'll start with you on this one, Antonia. Like, when a horror movie can make you feel emotions and make you cry like that, I think I've talked to a lot of people who teared up during that scene.
Oh yeah, I
like,
did.
Do you think horror movies do not get enough credit for having depth? Like, they scare people, but they make you feel feelings too, right?
Oh yeah, all the time. All of the time. There's so many emotions and feelings that can come from horror, because there's all these underlying themes that are present in every movie.
So I do want to talk a little bit about, we were kind of chatting about the marketing, which I'm very intrigued by some of the stuff we're going on. And one that just popped into my head was Smile is a very recent horror movie. Very similar themes to The Ring, where instead of a haunted VHS tape, it's someone smiling and you see them, and then the curse is passed on. But their viral marketing, they had one of the actresses who was in the beginning who did the smile and a very good job with a creepy smile. She sat at a baseball game. I think I saw that. It might have been a Dodgers game or I think it was in LA. And she just sat behind the camera doing the smile, which maybe I should do for our YouTube audience. or maybe they'll turn away. I don't know. Are there any, can we think of any other instances where the marketing really drew you into the movie? And if you can't think of anyone, you could mention one we already chatted about, like Blair Witch. Danielle, do you have one?
I do remember the Conjuring's original marketing,
Yes.
where they were like, many people have passed out and been hospitalized after seeing this film. And I was like, I don't know, 17. I'm like, I'm sold. Like, you don't need to say anything else to me. Like, I'm seated.
Did you pass out or get hospitalized with this movie?
No, but I watched that movie with my sister and my dad. And my dad, for like weeks after, would just bang his head into walls to freak us out. And I'm like, I am never watching a movie with you ever again.
I love that. That's such a good
he committed to the bit.
Oh, yeah. You got to appreciate that. That's 10 out of 10 dad stuff right there. Lee, are there any that pop into your mind that really made you want to see a movie?
Honestly, it's a hot take. Paranormal Activity. It's maybe not the best movie, but I think that the marketing was very similar to Hereditary, where they have like the night cam in the theater watching people's reaction. And that at that time really wasn't anything that you'd seen before. So it was very effective. I was a teenager. And I had loved horror movies. And so I went with my mom and my best friend, Christina. And I think the marketing did work because I was amped up the whole time. When I'm sitting in the seat, I'm like, well, why is everybody so scared? I'm waiting for it. And it's the silence that you're sitting with where I'm like, is everybody shaking because of the silence? And then, everything happens. But I think that was, one, revolutionary. And you see a couple films do that now, too. And two, like, it was effective. I was young and it worked. I thought it was great.
Antonia, you did mention one earlier with the Final Destination marketing.
I have another one though.
Oh, please share.
Did anybody see Longlegs?
Yes.
So there was a marketing where they posted a phone number, and you call the number and it's Longlegs and he talks to you. And I did that, and I was terrified, and I said, "Oh, I gotta turn the lights on. I gotta get out of here."
So Longlegs, what they did. So Nicolas Cage plays a very creepy person who's based on Tiny Tim, who was a rocker, and I did not know this, a rock musician. And someone said like, "Oh, that's based on Tiny Tim," and I thought it was Tiny Tim from a Christmas Carol. And I was like, oh, I really like that.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, that's neat. That's inspiration. But it was not that Tiny Tim.
I love that Tiny Tim. He's also part of Insidious.
Yeah, I was about to
right?
say that they
Tiny
played a
Tim,
song
a horror icon
Yes.
of our generation.
from SpongeBob to Insidious.
Oh man. But Longlegs, they never revealed Nicolas Cage's character,
Which I loved
I did
because
love that.
they also did that for Nosferatu. I felt like that marketing was so good because
absolutely.
you never saw him until the film came out.
And is that one of the issues when movies give away too much?
Oh, yeah.
The Sinners trailer, we've been avoiding spoilers for that. That gives away the entire movie.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. So Longlegs, did that marketing inspire you? Did you want to go watch it then more after that?
I definitely. So it's very 50-50 because it was so spooky, and I was definitely like, I felt frightened in the theater, but at the same time, they kind of over marketed it, and they said it was this modern day Silence of the Lambs. I don't feel like that's what it was. I
Yeah,
felt like
I
that
agree.
gave me too high of like expectations for it, but I still liked it for what it was, like as its own thing.
Okay. So we're going to take a short break here, but if you're just tuning in, we're talking about horror movies, the state of scary movies. I'm joined by Antonia Bias, a digital creator, horror artist, film enthusiast, Lee Rodriguez, one of my coworkers at the Little Theater, an artist and horror movie fan, and Danielle Del Plato, member of GWNYFCA, which is the Greater Western New York Film Critics Association. I do like saying that, rolls off the tongue, and a VHS collector at Donnie's Video. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more connections in a moment.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Bob Johnson Auto Group, proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson. Believing an informed public makes for a stronger community. BobJohnsonAutoGroup.com.
And thanks for listening to Connections. We're back. We're talking about scary movies this hour, the state of horror movies. So we have an interesting comment on YouTube asking our thoughts on musical horror films. So Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street, Little Shop of Horrors, Repo the Genetic Opera.
Yes.
I don't know if I know
Yes.
that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, what are our thoughts on musical horrors? And it seemed to be approving. Lee, do you want to give your thoughts on that genre?
Oh no. So musicals aren't really my thing. But if it's horror, I can get behind it. So I think it's a nice gateway for two different sides of like entertainment to kind of have a crossover episode. So things like Sweeney Todd or the Genetic Opera, I think I forget about the musical part of it and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. And the songs kind of slap. So so yeah, I'm into it.
I love that. Antonia, any thoughts on when we add some music to our horror, which I guess Sinners does have like
Yeah,
in a
it's
little
definitely
way.
musical horror
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, I love music. I love singing, not well, but I can definitely sing along to like the entire Sweeney Todd soundtrack and Little Shop of Horrors. I just think it's fun. I think it's something so fun. And like recently, they've actually been like putting out like horror musicals on Broadway, like Saw the musical, Insidious the musical, Ash versus Evil Dead, like the musical, which I think is just so fun. Like it's just a good time. And if you sit up front, you can get sprayed with blood, which I think is so
Love
cool.
that.
I want to go.
How have I not done that yet? I think,
Right.
isn't there a Scream the musical too?
Oh
Or-
yes, there is.
Is that off Broadway? I think I've seen clips on.
I think
like,
they
TikTok
just like
about
kind of travel too. They kind of travel around. I don't know if there's that one is still going on. I've seen the one I've seen recently is Saw, still traveling right now, but
it. That would have been good if we had fake blood for this
Yes.
hour. We're just
a
spraying it.
sprinkler.
Yeah. They would not invite me back, I guess, so. But it would be worth it, maybe. Who's to say? Danielle, do you like it when horror movies kind of mix genres like musical or comedy or something else?
I love it. I love any sort of genre bend. I think it's, an opportunity for a filmmaker to do something different, and anything different, I am all about it. I think my favorite genre bend would probably be Jennifer's Body.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Which is comedy horror, but I mean, it's also just like a very definitive piece of feminist filmmaking. But,
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad that we're giving people movie recommendations too. I hope someone has their letterbox out and they're checking it out. They're getting all of these on here. Lee, so are there any movies that you are looking forward to, horror movies, or ones that just came out? Like we were talking a little about 28 Years Later. There's some coming out this summer. Is there one that's at the top of your mind?
I mean, I just saw the 28 Years, and I'm trying really hard not to like yap about it and spoil it. I'm gonna keep that one in my back pocket. But I did just watch Ash, and it's on Shudder, and it just came out. I think March. I think it was March 21st. And that one, if anybody has Shudder or can get it, I'm not really sure exactly other than Shudder where it's showing. This is a cosmic horror, like color graded phenomenon that I think everybody should watch it. It's beautifully artistic. The soundtrack, and we were talking about music in horror, like it gives you this ambiance that you sit with and you're surrounded by it. Everything is beautifully done. I mean, every shot could be a photograph. It really, that one, and it's brand new. So yeah.
Okay, that is one I have not watched.
Oh, it's amazing.
So I'm getting movie recommendations too. I love it. I actually do want to talk about 28 Years Later a little because I have seen that. So to add a little context, this is a zombie movie. It's a zombie franchise. It started with a really low budget gem from Danny Boyle, who's the director. Alex Garland was the writer. Had Cillian Murphy, and it had a real gritty look. Like it was, which I saw some people recently complaining about how it looked, but that was part of the appeal to it. So then they did a sequel 28 weeks later, and now 28 years later, which is not actually 28 years since the release. But it shows the evolution of this virus, the rage virus that turns people into these really speedy zombies. Or now it evolves, they're like really big and muscular. They're almost like bros. I call them zombros. Is what. So I thought really the way they evolved this movie and the film, the first act has, so Aaron Taylor Johnson stars with it, and he so in the movie the virus is pretty much just contained to the UK, I believe, or is it just England maybe? So the rest of the world is fine. It's just them. So Aaron Taylor Johnson's character goes out with his son to they're on a separate island and they're safe, but they like to go out. I actually didn't really know the purpose why they went out that first time, but they went out to get some zombies, and it had some of the most like thrilling, suspenseful scenes, and then it's a film that what we've been talking about had actually an emotional resonance to it. So have we all seen 28 Years Later or not yet? Not yet over here.
I've seen it.
So yeah. So were you a fan, or did this not work for you?
This worked for me actually quite well, and I think it has to do with Alex Garland writing it, because Alex Garland also wrote the original 28 Days Later, and I think having him come back to the franchise really made a difference, right? And he's also like a very experienced writer. But yeah, I think like without Garland's writing, it probably wouldn't have worked for me. But it's a crazy time. It truly is.
Yeah, I was going to add a comment, and I was like, there's a visual image that's actually on one of the posters, so I don't know if it's quite a spoiler. It involves skulls.
Oh, I've seen that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of skulls. So I don't think it's a spoiler. Lee, I know you said you maybe didn't want to talk about would you mind giving us some comments?
I feel like now I'm the black sheep of the room. I did not like it.
It's okay to not
at
like
all.
movies. It's all right.
I feel bad because I work at the Little, so I'm supposed to like them all. But
oh yeah,
this one I did not. I think I'm going to give a little shout out to one of our regulars, Chris. He brought to my attention that, and it was a good thing, that maybe I had a little bit too high of expectations. I know I was chatting about this earlier, that I'm such a massive fan, and it's so dear to my heart, this 28 franchise, where I think I loved it so much that I went into it expecting so much out of it, and then I was disappointed, which I think most people are going to get disappointed when they have really, really high expectations. So I think that it did well with first act. Kind of it was a slow burn. It draws you in, and then the second act really like it hits a high, and it's emotion. I mean, I cried. I sobbed in the theater. And then the last act, I think it fell flat on its face. And I feel like that's a little aggressive, but I think it was trying to do too many things at once. And if they had focused, this is a 3-parter movie too. I don't know how many people know that, but this is a first part of 3. So I'm curious to see how they finish it out with the second and the third. But I feel like if they had stuck with one of the plots, especially the second act, it would have really hit hard. But that's just me.
That's fair. It's okay to not like movies. It's fine. This is a space to talk about that. And Sigrid, if you want to call in and give us your comments, 844-295-TALK, or if you're local, 263-9994. You can let us know. So I do want to talk a little bit more about movies we're excited about, horror movies that are coming up this summer. Although I'm going to go back to marketing because we got a comment on YouTube that I found a little interesting. So this is from Heather. She says, love the marketing comments. Check out the old scam related to The Exorcist. Most of it was a scam, but it was effective. People vomiting, passing out, running out of the theater. This was before social media, cell phones, everything reported on the news or in the paper. And then she says, fun times. It does sound fun. I do enjoy that. Do we think that social media has changed how these movies are we're going to go back to the marketing because I'm a little curious about this. But do we think like social media or Reddit or just modern times have changed? Like, would we be able to do something like at the Little if we play a movie like this? Can we set up people fake vomiting or
I hope
that?
so.
Oh, yeah.
Can we pitch this?
I've seen so many like TikToks with like clown in a cornfield. I don't know if anyone saw that one, but like they had people dressed up like Friendo, just like sitting in the theater with people, and like I just think that's so fun.
Yeah.
So a
that's
creepy
fun.
clown in the theater. Oh,
yeah,
I do
just
like
hanging
that.
out,
That's so great.
walking around,
Like,
sitting
give
with
people another reason to be scared. Like, give it to me.
Do we think that? So in the intro, so if those who are just tuning in, we talked a little bit about 1999's The Blair Witch Project, and that they convinced people that this was real, that these actors, they used their real names in the film, that there were actually people that went out with camcorders, were exploring this legend of the Blair Witch and disappeared in the woods, never to be seen. Do we think we could pull anything off like that, or are people just like, no, that's marketing. We're eye roll. Danielle, do you have thoughts?
I mean, okay, this is a little off topic, but I have been telling my friends for many years, I'm like, if we could just find someone to kidnap us and bring us to a woods and just watch Blair Witch in that sort of capacity, like the full 4DX experience of Blair Witch, I feel like that'd be great. But on another note, it's kind of like with social media, could we get the Blair Witch experience to happen again? Because I mean, Blair Witch actors were completely unknown, and I feel like with social media we can't mimic that ever
and also
again.
AI is
Oh,
so big,
yes.
people are gonna just question it immediately.
yeah.
And be
Right.
like, that's probably AI.
I do love the watching a movie in its setting. So
Yes.
like watching the Blair Witch in a wood. I don't know about the kidnapping part.
I need to be scared.
You should not do that in the radio. Please don't do that to Danielle. Listeners. Well, one movie that I am excited about that's coming, it opens August 8th at the Little, is a film called Weapons. Have our panel seen the trailer?
Absolutely.
Okay, we're in a
Briefly.
moment. We're going to go to a clip. We have a clip, so the clip will explain a little bit of what it's about. But to set up a little background, this was directed by Zach Cregger, whose last film was 2022's Barbarian.
Oh, I loved that.
Which was a huge horror hit. So Barbarian, I think, did a good job with its marketing too. That was very distinctly in 3 acts, which I loved the first act, where you don't know what's going to happen. It's almost like a rom-com in ways. And then you're like, but you're watching a horror movie, so you're like, something's going to go wrong. And then the second act takes a huge left-hand turn, has a new character, has Justin Long is in it.
Yes.
And then the third act, I thought got a little off the tracks, and I wasn't a fan of that as much. But his new film, which we're going to go to the clip here in a moment, has a very interesting premise. So let's take a listen.
This is a true story that happened in my town. So this one Wednesday is like a normal day for the whole school. But today was different. Every other class had all their kids. But Mrs. Gandy's room was totally empty. And you know why? Because the night before, at 2:17 in the morning, every kid woke up, got out of bed, walked downstairs, and into the dark. And they never came back.
So that was a clip from Weapons from Zach Cregger, which opens August 8th at the Little. And I don't know, can you see why I connected that to the marketing thing? Where like, what if a classroom just like
Oh gosh.
just
Disappeared.
I mean, not like actual sinister disappear, but like if they were doing like a prank and they disappeared, maybe that would not be good marketing. Now that I'm saying that out loud on the radio. But is this one? So I like a movie that doesn't explain much and it gives you that intrigue, like, oh, they disappeared, only this class, why?
Yeah.
Does this work on you, Antonia? Is this
I
something
think
you're
so.
like, I'm in line for?
Oh yeah, I would definitely go see it. I feel like I like you were saying too, like I try not to watch too many trailers because sometimes they give too much away. But that sounds like it gives nothing away. So
I was like, you weren't avoiding that. I'm just like, here, listen to this.
no. I definitely would go see that. It kind of like reminds me of like, you know, just like It. Just like with the
Oh, yeah.
children. So spooky.
And I was gonna say with minus like a Pennywise or a creepy clown, but that's the
Yeah.
thing, we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
Maybe
It could
there
be
is
anything.
a clown. Who's to say? I hope not. That's terrifying. Lee, are you on board for Weapons?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's the classic saying, like, you know, it's not the dark that scares me, it's what's in it. So like, what is this dark? Why are they going down there? I appreciate not giving away too much, because that leaves the director and the movie to do it for you while you're watching it instead of trying too hard with the trailers. So I saw it actually when I went to go see 28 Years. I saw the trailer for it and I was like, I went to go close my eyes because it looked good. And I'm like, I don't want to ruin it. But I looked through my fingers and it didn't give anything away. So I really appreciated that. But I'm on board. I'm excited.
Danielle, so you were a fan of Zach Cregger's first movie, Barbarian, right? Are you
Correct.
still on board with Weapons? though?
I'm on board with any scary movie. I will always go and see it. I might not like it, but the teaser trailer for Weapons was even more sort of elusive.
I don't know if I saw that.
It was just like some black and white footage of children running, and it just had like a website that was like findthem.com or something.
Oh, so it
advertising.
is the viral
Yeah.
marketing.
Mhm.
So,
Oh my gosh.
but like it didn't really get a lot of steam, that teaser, unfortunately.
Did
but
you go to that website or no?
No, I question a website.
That's fair. So someone go to that website and then call in or email us and let us know what you find. So we're running out of time. There's still a lot I want to talk about. But one other movie that I'm excited about that's coming out opens. It's a Wednesday opening, Wednesday, July 30th. It's coming to the Little, and it's Together.
Oh, I'm so excited for
Wait,
that.
Okay,
I'm
this is
pumped,
getting
yes.
buzz. So I'm going to give it a little introduction on it, then we could talk about it. So it's gotten buzz at film festivals. It stars Alison Brie and Dave Franco, who I believe are married in real life, or they're together in real life. Directed by Michael Shanks. It's from Neon, which has released some really interesting stuff recently as well. Quick plot synopsis. After moving to the countryside, a supernatural encounter starts to transform a couple's love, their lives, and their flesh. And the trailer hints at some David Cronenberg like shenanigans, I think. Antonia, are you seated for this?
Oh yeah, I love gore. I love body horror. That's probably my favorite subgenre. So yeah, definitely like anything like The Thing, like anything Cronenberg, anything just like Lovecraftian. I'm sat for.
Yeah, and your Instagram handle has gore in it, right?
Oh yeah, because
yeah,
every
you're
time
ready.
I'm like gore scale 10 out of 10.
So Leah, I'll go to you. What are your thoughts on Together? Does this rank high on a film that you're anticipating?
Oh, absolutely. I'm the same way. I love body horror. The Thing. Like, I'm also a big practical effects person, so I'm wondering how they're going to pull this off. If it's going to be mostly CGI, if it's going to be practical, a mixture of the two. I mean, The Substance really put the bar high.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm curious to see if this is going to hit that bar, fall below it. So I'm really excited about it.
Danielle, you're nodding too.
Yeah, I'm so hype. I think it's going to be really interesting how they land with effects, right? Because Substance set the bar so high, like unbelievably high. So there's a chance that this could just totally crumble, but I hope not. I'm so excited for
But
it.
we're here for it.
Yeah.
If it crumbles or not, we'll be seated.
Right.
And people have seen it, and I think it's gotten good. At least,
I think it got a high rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
yeah, I think people have been interested.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't always trust that.
Yeah.
Because there's festival brain where you watch it at a festival with a big crowd, and you're like, oh, this is the best.
But
and
it's
then,
Dave Franco.
and I like Alison Brie, so I'm ready for that. And I'm glad that you brought up The Substance, too, because I do want to talk about that. A couple things with that. First of all, a lot of these movies we've mentioned are directed by men. These horror movies seems to be a genre that a lot of these men are making films. But The Substance, which was nominated for multiple Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Actress, Demi Moore. Maybe she was robbed. Who's to say? Who's to say? And it did win an Oscar as well. I believe it was makeup, right? Yeah. So, is there a time where we can expect to see more horror movies from women? I mean, I feel like the protagonists are women a lot. The final girl trope, like how many movies, like it works when a woman is leading it. So, what do you think it'll take to see more women who are writing and directing films, and studios are having these films made? Danielle, do you have any thought? I know that's a lot.
It is a lot. I do think we are in a time where studios are sort of looking to hire more women behind the camera. And I think actually 28 years later is Nia DaCosta.
I believe so.
Doing the next installment. We love Nia DaCosta. Go Nia DaCosta. But
she listens, so that's great.
Yes. Shout out. Anyway, I do think we're in a time where, horror is such an interesting genre because you can bend it. You can use it as a Trojan horse to put in some sort of narrative. And I think when women direct horror films, they typically have such a deep message. And so I'm hoping that studios will continue to give that platform to them. But who's to say? Studios are so unpredictable.
But this is what we want, right, Lee? We want this.
Yeah, we want women behind the camera.
Yes.
We really like a viewpoint from a woman. So I think we're looking at the difference between body horror from a man and body horror from a woman, and what it means to be in a body that sometimes rebels against you. And we're seeing a really cool shift between bodies just to gawk and slice up, and bodies to respect and I think look a little deeper at, I guess. I don't know.
And that is what The Substance is.
Absolutely.
The Substance was a movie, I remember I was guffawing a lot. The first time I watched it, and I'm like, this is wild. And the second time I watched it, I appreciated it a lot. I was like, wow, this is actually really good. It's funny. I thought it was too long when I first watched it, but the second time I'm like, oh, it flows pretty well. And I think what it does is it does exactly what you just said, Lee, where it has things to say on those body images and those tropes that we've seen. And some of the most disgusting parts are men, like someone eating. There's someone at a urinal cam. Do you think we'll see more stuff like The Substance?
I hope so.
I loved The Substance. I love feminist horror. I think it was just so good. It was so raw, especially like as a woman who has body image issues. I thought it just spoke a lot on that, and like just the way that Hollywood treats women, and just the bigger message that you can't always be young, beautiful, perfect, whatever they want. Like, you're still worthy at the end of the day. I just think her message was just told very well with like 30,000 gallons of blood.
Which I think that was the number, right? 30,000 gallons of blood.
Yep.
There's a lot of fake blood in it. It is wild.
Blood.
It's a wild film. And it won't be for everyone, but that's okay. We like movies that take a chance. And actually, so Michael via email is talking about horror genre that we didn't even mention, which is monster movies. He says they were on Friday afternoons, and they were based on. So he watched monster movies growing up. They were on Friday afternoons, and they were based on what if radiation from nuclear tests caused horrible mutations. So he remembers titles like The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, which I haven't heard, but that sounds great. Them and the original Godzilla. He said we'd watch them on Friday and be scared all weekend. Them were gigantic ants who ate humans.
Oh my gosh.
Love that.
I love a monster movie.
There's a lot of films like that where it's like some kind of giant bug or creature, animal or something, and it's just like wreaking havoc on people.
So trying to mesh all these things together, monster movies, the substance, as we mentioned, got a bunch of Oscar nominations, won an Oscar. Horror is a genre where we don't see it get love from awards. Do we think this could change? Danielle, would you like to see it change?
I mean, I would like to see it change, and I think it is changing quite a bit. I think we are in the era of prestige horror. So I think, not to keep talking about studios, but I think studios are sort of looking for that next big horror movie that could compete at the Oscars and could compete during award season, because people like these films. People are going out to see them. They make money. So,
Lee, what about you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think we're what it takes to make a horror movie is so much. There's music, there's lighting, there's makeup, there are all of these things that it takes to put into a movie, and they deserve to have awards because there's so much hard work behind everybody who puts their whole heart into it.
Okay, real quick before we go, give us a horror movie recommendation. Antonia.
American Psycho.
Love it.
Oh,
Lee,
no.
give us. Do you have one?
There's a new one, Wolf, by Eagers, that's coming out very soon next year.
Danielle, do you have one?
Tusk. Go watch Tusk.
Go, a Valentine's movie, some would say. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to my guests, Antonia Bias, Lee Rodriguez, Danielle Del Plato. Stay tuned. We have more member-supported public radio coming up.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.